evening. Welcome to Inside Out. I'm Pat Smith, and this is where we take you inside state, local, federal government, and nonprofit agencies as well. And that's what we're doing here this evening. Helping me to do that is Tim Wiens. Tim is the Executive Director of Jubilee Association of Maryland, Inc., which deals with adults with developmental disabilities.
Right.
How did Jubilee get started?
Well, it started from the Hyattsville Mennonite Church that I was a part of 40 years ago, and the church had volunteers that were doing service projects. They were working at Forest Haven, which was the District of Columbia's institution for people with developmental disabilities. And these church volunteers said, you know, this is really important work, but this is not the way to do it. These are not good conditions for folks. And so the idea of starting a group home as an alternative to that came up. And so there was a lot of talk about, you know, doing that and starting a group home to create an alternative to institutions. And the state of Maryland at that time, that's what they were doing. They were starting to open group homes. That was the beginning of that phase of our services.
And how many folks were you able to initially accommodate? How many were at the D.C. facility, and how many were you able to accommodate?
So I don't know how many were at the D.C. facility, but there were, at its peak, there were thousands, and then, you know, they downsized to hundreds. And so we opened a 7-person group home. I mean, that was the state of the art 40 years ago, is, you know, group homes of that size. We would never do that today, but that was, we opened and began serving 7 individuals back in 1978.
What is an overview of what you do for these individuals with developmental disabilities?
So we provide community residential services. So our mission, our goal is to serve adults that have intellectual and developmental disabilities residentially, and we do that in a lot of different ways. And so we started with group homes. That was the kind of the model 40 years ago, and we still do some group homes, but we've moved away from that and helping people live in the community. Adults live in the community with supports, and so we serve about 138 people on a daily basis in over 70 locations, and so 15 of those are still small group homes, are licensed as group homes by the state. And most of those are 3-person homes. That original home has 5 people in it, and it's still there. But then we've started doing things differently. So we have 30 or 40 people that live in their own apartments, and we have counselors that go in there and help them live in their apartments, help them with budgeting, money management, the supervision that they need. And then we've started partnering with people that do the housing, and we do the services. And so some of those homes look like group homes. If you walked in, you would say, this is just a group home, but we don't own it. It's not our home. And that's kind of the direction that we're going and our field is going, is to separate housing from services. So we're partnering with the Housing Opportunities Commission. They have 4 homes they own. People rent from them. We provide the services. Rosario Communities, which is connected with the Catholic Archdiocese, they have some homes connected to parishes. We provide the services. They rent from Rosario. Montgomery Housing Partnership, more with apartments, where they have apartment buildings they own. We have folks living there. And then we also do some in-home supports, where people are still living with their parents, and we're going in and providing services to make it easier for them to live with their parents. And I guess the third model is we've encouraged families to leave their house to their son or daughter. And usually it's in a trust, and we'll manage it, but they can, you know, they grew up in this community and they can still live in this house where they grew up. Okay.
And so most of them are on Social Security disability?
Almost everybody are on getting Social Security benefits, and it might be supplemental security income or it might be Social Security disability benefits from their parents. But Medicaid is a big player in our system, and so at the state level for our services, it's matched with state funds. They get SSI, supplemental security income, and they get their health insurance from Medicaid. So Medicaid is kind of the backbone of the system, you know, both in Maryland and throughout the country.
And well, you mentioned the parents leaving the home to the individual, the disabled
right.
individual.
Right.
That is one exception that does not interrupt their benefits coming from the federal government.
Right.
And so I'd like to emphasize that to our viewers, that you can leave the home to them.
Yeah.
And as long as they're going to live in it, it can be titled in their name. Yeah.
And we have a couple people like that. Usually the family will set up a special needs trust and they'll put the house in that trust, and that makes it even more clean.
Right. So you set up the trust, and that is sanctioned by the federal government.
Right.
And who is the beneficiary at the end of the trust?
Well, there are two kinds of special needs trust, and then we're going to have something called the ABLE Act that was passed at the federal and state level. But so for a lot of families, what they will do when the parents pass away, they'll put money into this trust. Instead of, the distribution goes to the various children, and then the child that has the disability gets their share, but it goes into this trust. And if you set it up like that, so the individual has never controlled the money in any way, then the family can designate a beneficiary.
Oh, okay.
And so it might be another family member. Sometimes it's Jubilee. It doesn't have to be, but they can designate who they want. If the individual themselves has money that they want to put in, that's a different kind of special needs trust. And in those cases, in order for the individual to continue to be kind of qualified for Medicaid, they can do that, but then when the individual passes away, the money goes back to Medicaid, or whatever expenses they have had, they can recoup from that.
Okay.
So it can work both of those ways.
It's one or the other.
Right.
And the difference is how the funds originate, whether it's coming from an inheritance as that person's share, and before they exercise control of it, it goes into the trust.
Exactly.
Then the family gets to designate the beneficiary on that.
Exactly.
That's interesting. I was always wondering about that because, wait a minute, you're going to put all this money in there. Where's it going to go?
Right.
What distinguishes Jubilee as an agency?
Well, we think how we're different, because there are a lot of agencies that do what we do in Montgomery County and in Maryland, and that's a good thing. I mean, I think it's a good thing for families and individuals to have choices, and different agencies kind of have their niches. And, we talk about there are three, we call them strategic anchors that we think we do better than anybody else. And so other people do these things. So we're faith-based. We're started by a Mennonite church. We still have, that's why we do what we do. That's what motivates us to do what we do. And we serve people of any faith and any denomination, or no faith. You don't have to be any faith to be served, and there aren't religious practices required, but that's why we do what we do. And I think we attract people out of that kind of motivation. So being faith-based, I think, has something to do with the quality that we provide. It's why we do what we do. We think of ourselves as being innovative. That's a second strategic anchor, so that we're always figuring out new ways to do what we do. And so we kind of start with the individual and say, well, what's going to work for Johnny? Instead of saying, well, we have an opening in our group home, we say, where would you like to live? Who would you like to live with? How can we make this happen? Our partnering with different organizations is trying to find new ways to make things happen. And then building partnerships is the third strategic anchor. We're always trying to figure out ways to work with other folks. We're very good at residential services, and we don't want to do, we want other people to do housing. We partnered with a group called Spirit Club, which is based with Jubilee, and they do kind of exercise, and they have kind of a fitness club that specializes for people with disabilities. And so it's a separate corporation, but we're kind of partnering with them. We're partnering with the faith community through Rosario communities. So we're always looking at how we can build partnerships to kind of extend what we do. So I think those are the things that we think distinguish us. Okay,
the kinds of services that you provide in-home to them in an apartment or wherever they may be living, what does that comprise?
What does that look like? So we serve a wide range of levels of disability, and so we have people who really live very independently and only need a little bit of help, and then we have people that need 24-hour supervision and need help with kind of activities of daily living. And so for people that are independent, so people that are pretty independent, they live in their own apartment, They almost always need help with money management, and so we do a lot of that. We oversee medical services, so we don't provide medical services, but we have 2 full-time nurses, and so overseeing medication, making sure people are taking the right medication, that they're getting to the doctor, that they're following up from their doctor is a big area. Food planning, you know, how do you plan nutritious meals? How do you go shopping? How do you prepare them? How do you store your food? All that kind of stuff. Almost everybody needs help with that. And then social relationships, just kind of helping them make sure they're connected, that they have friends, that they have a faith community to connect to, that they have things to do, and problem solving around social relationships. So those are the kind of basics we do with everybody. We have people that need a lot of assistance that can't do very much for themselves, and we have people that can do a lot for themselves, and kind of the whole spectrum.
What is the social interaction among the people that you're serving? Are they they're aware of other people being involved and all that? Is there any social activities that...
So, you know, social interaction to the people we serve is important to them like it is to everybody else, and it looks differently for different people. And so, you know, we're trying to organize kind of small things that happen on a daily basis as well as bigger things. And so we have, you know, big things. We have a beach trip that we plan and people go to, and you know, it's completely voluntary. Not everybody goes, but of the 138 people, we probably have 70 people that go. And we ran a bunch of places at the beach for a week, and some people go the first half and some people go the second half, and we have staff there, and people love it. They have many different houses, and they can go out and do things. We have a Valentine's Day dance. We have holiday parties. But we also, you know, we're trying to make the connections, you know, so we'll have several homes, and some of them will say, well, on Thursday night this week we're going to go to your house, and then the next week they'll go to their house, and so they'll have dinner together. And then we just find out what people like to do, and the counselor will plan going to the movies, going bowling, going for walks, doing exercise. And you know, and we encourage dating and kind of romantic behavior as well. And it's I think most people want intimacy in their life, and you know, some people that we serve get married, but very few. But so, what does that look like, and how do you navigate that? It's something I talk about when I do an orientation for new employees. Is you know, how people develop romantic relationships is very complicated for all of us. And so a person with an intellectual disability, understanding the rules and expectations can be very confusing. And so helping them navigate, you know, those kind of social situations.
It's a real challenge.
It is, for all of us.
How many employees do you have?
We have 260 employees.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a big number, and because we're residential and we're working, you know, most of our staff are working evenings and weekends. We have a lot of part-time employees, so about half, maybe more than half of those are part-time.
Okay.
So that's the biggest challenge is you know, doing a good job of recruiting and screening and onboarding and orienting employees.
Sure. All right, Tim, we'll be right back.
Okay.
I'm with Tim Wiens. He's the executive director of Jubilee Association of Maryland. They work with the developmentally disabled. We'll be right back.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Welcome back. You're watching Inside Out, where we take you inside state, local, and federal government and among our community nonprofit organizations to bring that information out to you. Helping me do that this evening is Tim Wiens. He's the executive director of Jubilee Association of Maryland, which focuses on assisting and providing services to the developmentally disabled. What is your connection with Kensington? I know you're located headquarters.
We are located here, and so, as I said earlier, we've been around for 40 years, and we, you know, as with many organizations, we started kind of in the garage, you know, when we, and my office was in this shed behind one of our original group homes, and then we had office space in Wheaton, right next to the Metro, for maybe 10 years, and then through some help from the state, we were looking to buy an office building, and so about 15 years ago, we were looking for, you know, a home, and we serve all of Montgomery County, and you know, we found this office building in Kensington that was the right size, and you know, Kensington is a great community. We love being here. It's central, fairly central to the county for us, and so you know, it was somewhat by chance, but somewhat by design that we bought a building here, and so we've been in Kensington for 15 years, and we love it. I mean, it's a great location. It's, you know, there's a small town feel to it. You know, you get to know the mayor easily, and the town council members. You can go to the, you know, the farmers market on Saturday. It's just, there's a feeling of being in a small town. And so we serve all of the county, but we're based here. And so, you know, we have 260 employees, and they come and go, but we have about 40 of those are based at the office in Kensington.
Okay. And of course, now Senator, former Congressman Chris Van Hollen's from Kensington. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier the ABLE Act,
right?
Which I know then Congressman Van Hollen was influential in passing through the congressional process.
Yeah.
What is the ABLE Act?
Yeah, and so Chris Van Hollen was one of the sponsors when he was a congressman to bring that to fruition, and I think it had been in discussion for years, and then there's enabling legislation that happened at the state level, and now regulations are being put in place, and hopefully this fall it will kind of completely, you know, roll out. But as I was mentioning earlier, the vast majority of the people that we serve receive Medicaid benefits, and that's key to their services. And with Medicaid, you can only you can have a maximum of $2,000 in assets. And so some of the folks that we serve, some of them work, they have benefits, some of them bring in $1,800 a month. And so, you know, juggling, they can't save that money. And so we've got to spend it. We're always trying to spend this money down to keep them under. And the ABLE Act allows them to put money aside for designated purposes that doesn't account against their Medicaid eligibility. And so there are rules about what that looks like. And then when they pass away, if there's assets there, it goes back to the government. But it allows them to save for things that they might need, really, and to keep their Medicaid eligibility.
Sounds like a very sensible alternative compared to rushing to spend things.
Exactly.
To get the money moving out of there.
Exactly.
You mentioned that most of your funding comes from the state of Maryland, but you do private fundraising as well?
We do.
How do you accomplish that?
We do a variety of things. We have an annual roast, in which, you know, we don't roast animals, we roast live people, I like to say. And so it's kind of fun, and it's, you know, the humor is a little bit edgy, and we roasted Chris Van Hollen when he was a congressman a couple of years ago. We roasted David Falk 2 years ago, the super sports agent, you know, and he had sports people there. And this year we're roasting Kathleen Matthews. And, you know, she's a real leader in our community, and agreed to be roasted and has been a supporter of ours. And so, you know, it's a mix of kind of politics and media. So she, you know, she was in the media for many years as an anchor, as a news anchor. So Gordon Peterson is the MC for that. Allison Starling, who is a news anchor, is one of the roasters. And then Chris Matthews, her husband from Hardball, is one of the roasters. So, you know, if anybody has material, it would be him.
And she probably on him.
Yeah, well, that's true. She does get to respond. And then Jamie Raskin, the person that beat her for Congress, is one of the roasters as well. And so, the reason that these work well for us is the roastee gets to choose the roasters. So these are friends of hers, and these are friends of, and so it's all in good humor. It's not mean-spirited. It's not nasty. None of that kind of stuff. And so it's a fun kind of event, and it helps us raise money. So that's the big event that we do, and that's coming up this year, May 11. And if people go on our website, they can get information about going. We're going to be celebrating our 40th anniversary starting July 1st, and we'll be doing some fundraising for that. We have some campaigns going. We're trying to get 40 families to leave to remember Jubilee in their will. And so that really is creating a long-time legacy. So a lot of that money won't come in until I'm well gone from there. But creating sort of an endowment that will help us through hard times, because public money, it ebbs and flows. And, I've been in this long enough to know that's the past and that'll be the future. And so just to create a better foundation. So I think doing planned giving, especially with the families of the people that we serve, but other folks also, we're going to do some a campaign to raise money just to kind of improve our buildings and our homes and our automobiles and things like that. We always do a holiday appeal at the end of the year. So those are kind of the ways that we do fundraising. We have a annual budget of just over $10 million. Most of that comes as a Medicaid state dollars, but we raised last year about $800,000. So that really helps us be a better organization. The public fund is kind of the foundation that we need, and then this helps us do a little bit more, be a little bit better, do creative and innovative things, be mission driven.
Well, as you set out on that course to have people do their wills so that they include Jubilee Association. Right. If you reach out to the Bar Association of Montgomery County, I am sure that there are volunteers among us lawyers that would be glad to accommodate doing the will.
Good. Well, I appreciate
to do that. So something to keep in mind. And I'm sure Barry would tell you the same.
Yeah, and that's where most people's assets are in their estates. I mean, they have retirement, they have their homes, et cetera, and it's. If they're going to give, the average person could give a significant gift then. Whereas if you ask them for money today, well, they got bills to pay and they have obligations day to day. So.
Sure. What is your website so our viewers would be able to access that?
It's probably going to be on the screen, but it's www.jubilee, JUBILEEMD for Maryland, Jubilee, Maryland, all one word, .org. And so all of this stuff is on our website.
Okay. How, you mentioned you had about 260 employees, and about half of them are part-time.
Right.
How do you advertise for jobs and their vacancies and what have you? People be interested in doing this kind of work.
And that, how you attract people and screen them and get them into your agency is changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years. So everything is web-based now. And we go to job fairs and we advertise on job sites, but especially for young people, I've said to some people we have employed, how did you find us? And they said, well, I Googled you. So we have a director of development, and she was looking for a development job in Montgomery County. She Googled it, and we came up because we have our listings on our website and out there, so that if you Google it, it comes up. So, and then you can manage that kind of process on a web-based thing. So it tracks all of your employees, it responds to them. So, the frustration of you send in your application, you never hear anything. And if we get 40 or 50 applicants for a position, it's hard to keep up with that. But as you automate it, you can do a better job of kind of responding to people. But one of the big issues in our field is the direct service worker, because those workers, counselors that we call them, that work in the homes, work with individuals, they make a modest income. The average direct service wage for our employees is about $13.50. Some of them are working multiple jobs. We have overtime built in. And so how do you kind of attract and maintain that workforce? And a lot of agencies are really struggling with being able to attract and retain people. And I think we've worked really hard at this. We have a turnover rate of about 22%, which for our field is very good. You know, a lot of people are at 50. So if you have 260 employees with a 22% turnover rate, you're hiring 50 people a year. I mean, that's a lot.
Right.
And then you grow, and there's another 20 or 30. So bringing on 50 to 70 people, and we're kind of a middle-sized organization, is a lot. And if you're having, you know, worse turnover rates, then it's even worse. So we really work at that, and we really work at being kind of mission-driven. You know, we talked about being faith-based, but it's also the work that we do. Why do you want to do this? And then, you know, really reinforcing that. So we work really hard at that. And, you know, we know why people come and why they stay. And, you know, people, and this is for all jobs, you come because you like your supervisor, you like the people you work with, and you care about the work you're doing.
Right.
You know, those are the foundations. And we really work at those things. And that shows in our lack of turnover and our vacancy rates, which are very low.
Which is very good, very positive for you.
But it's a passion of mine, as you can tell.
Because it's such a challenge to do that kind of work, to provide that kind of service.
Right.
It's got to be difficult to attract people to it, but we have a lot of good people in the world.
We do. And you know, if we could pay twice as much, I don't know that we would get a better workforce, you know, because you don't want people coming because, oh, we can make a lot of money there.
Right.
You want people coming because they want to change people's lives. They want to make a difference in the world. And so you know, a lot of my peers complain about there not being enough money, and you know, we can always use more money, but to me, money isn't the biggest challenge that we face.
Jubilee Association of Maryland, dealing with all of the developmentally disabled. Do we have a large percentage of our population here in Montgomery County that's developmentally disabled?
I think, trying to remember it's less than one. Of the people with disabilities, the number is bigger because you have all kinds of disabilities. But people with intellectual and other developmental disabilities, it's less than 1%. It's maybe half of 1%. So in 1 million people, that's a pretty big size number, but it's not a huge number. The number of people that have autism, you know, you hear about that growing in the school system, and you know, that's a kind of a controversial thing. You know, why is that? And certainly part of it is better diagnosis. You know, people that have Asperger, which are on the autism spectrum, you know, who can really live quite normally, but lack the social skills, are part of that. So that's growing. So it's not a huge number. But you know, when you have 1 million people in the county, adds up.
Great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Tim Wiens, the Executive Director of Jubilee Association of Maryland. It has been quite interesting, and it's a real challenging job that you do. And you say you've been there for 38 years.
And I love what I do. I mean, I really do.
Obviously so. Your contact information one more time for the viewers.
So it's www.jubilee, JUBILEEMD.org, and all of our contact information is on our website.
Okay. You've been watching Inside Out. I'm Pat Smith. We're here on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 7:30, Channel 16. Thank you.